I wonder if we should save this for the show. I don't know how riveting this will be for listeners, but like, I'm. How old are you guys again?
I'm 36, almost
Yeah.
37.
Okay,
Yes. Same.
and you guys are both in your mid 30s. Okay, I mean, which
Yes.
I
That's a generous description since
Yeah, mid. Yeah, very
we're
late.
about to be
Yeah.
in our mid to late 30s, but I
hold
appreciate
on.
that.
Look, I'll still claim to be mid 40s. I'm 48. I'm 40
There
and
you
a
go.
half.
There you go.
But I, I'm not the earliest generation of D&D. The game started in like the 70s, but
Sure.
I was 8 years old. Um, it was literally the summer I turned 8 when like a friend's mom was like, we were like sitting around bored at his house, and she's like, "Oh, why didn't you guys play that game you guys picked up?"
Nice.
And being 8 years old, you don't really understand the whole mechanics of the game. This was we didn't
Sure.
call it. It was second edition. We didn't call it that back then. It was Advanced Dungeon. The original D&D
Sick.
was first generation. This was a D&D.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I very short order. I bought like every book, the modules, and I spent an obsessive amount of time learning the rules, learning the lore. Like
Uh-huh.
I credit the game, and I credit like the original the writers. Gary Gygax is the legend of the industry who basically invented the game and wrote all the rules for teaching me about like the lore of like Western civilization. Like the monsters
Sure.
come
Sure.
from that to me, that I think that the biggest impact the game had on me was in that.
I bet.
Knowing what a lich is. I assume you guys have seen Stranger Things.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
I was
so
fired up that the opening scene of this was the Mind Flayer because other than Stranger
well,
Things,
exactly.
that's the only.
Well, I was watching that with my teenage daughters, the scene where I guess it's the end of season 2 where they talk about the Mind Flayer, and then
Mhm.
they pull out the book and they show the picture.
Yeah.
And I literally I paused the TV and I'm like, hold on, guys,
Mhm.
I'll be back. And I went down into the basement.
Yes.
On the bookshelf, grabbed my 40-year-old monster manual,
Amazing.
Nice.
opened it up, found the exact. I basically went back up, and I'm like, show him like this is the Mind Flayer right here. This is what he's looking at. This page of this book. They weren't nearly as impressed as they should have been.
Joining us now is a man who wears many hats, whether that's dermatologist by trade, NFL writer for The Ringer, Royals podcaster with Seren Petro, or this week, a national champion since Wolverines took care of business on Monday night. It's friend of the show, Rany Jazayerli. Rany, your segments with us are always reviewed glowingly by our listeners, so we cannot wait for another edition. How are you today?
I am doing well, guys. Yes, as you said, the maize and blue. I have a somewhat tortured history as a University of Michigan alumnus, both in terms of their success, but also my relationship with the team goes up and down because I do think sometimes Michigan, the program thinks of itself more highly than maybe it deserves, but it all paid off. 3 years after I thought Jim Harbaugh ought to be fired,
Mhm.
he is, he's walking on water. So that's a little humble pie for me mixed in with my national championship vibe. So
Well, it has to happen that way. That's okay. Before we get into what we're here to talk about, do you have any predictions on where that guy's going?
Yeah, going out on his own terms, probably, right?
it's
So,
interesting because today we got the news that Nick Saban is retiring,
Yep.
and I've when everyone has been talking for weeks really that it's just inevitable Jim Harbaugh is going to leave. I've always been like looking at the Nick Saban career path. I'm like, why exactly would Jim
right.
Harbaugh want to leave? Like, where is he? The Michigan motto now is basically who has it better than us? Nobody.
Yeah. Right.
Well, who has it better than him right now?
Right.
Like he walks on water in Ann Arbor, and he's pretty much guaranteed to have elite recruiting classes, be a top 5 program in college football for the foreseeable future. At a school with an elite academic reputation, a school with an elite, history as a college football, mainstay, winningest program in college football history. Like he's, a bad season, he's going to go like 10-3.
Yeah, sure.
would you really want to leave that to take the head coaching job of the Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, what about the
Or
dollar signs?
the Los Angeles Chargers?
Los Angeles Chargers, yeah, going up against Treacherous. And the dollar signs, like, how much money do you think these,
Sure.
can
Yeah,
you
right.
make as an NFL coach? Like,
Sure.
these guys are making literally 8 figures now, the
Right.
head coaches of college football programs. I think that's ridiculous. Why you probably think that's ridiculous, but I mean, it is big business, and one of the things that I've come around to enjoying college football a little bit more, but also not taking the whole Michigan scandals quite so seriously. And yes, okay, I'm a Michigan alumnus, so
Yeah, sure.
you could say, oh, I don't care because it's my team. The reason I don't care is because I feel like the hypocrisy of what college football has been for 50 years
Right.
was finally the house of cards that was sort of the amateur college athlete has fallen by the wayside, and players can get paid, and there's this acknowledgement that college football is a business. It's a very profitable business, but it's a business. Everybody who's engaged in that business should profit from it, including the players. Jim Harbaugh, to his credit, and much to the shame of so many of the other head coaches in college football who do not agree with him, but to his credit, he has said the players deserve to be paid even more.
Yes.
But I look at this now as it's a very profitable business that happens to be cloaked in a veneer of being conducted on university campuses,
Right.
but really has very little to do with the goal of
Right.
educating our nation's youth.
And it hasn't for a long time. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. So, this idea. So, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Michigan is such hypocrites because they've always held themselves up to be like a pure program than, the Florida States of the world or whatever, and they were caught up in the scandal. And my feeling is kind of good for them that they're finally admitting that
Right.
the sport isn't pure, that this isn't about, educating, college athletes. I mean, great. If they
Right.
get an education, it's good for
Yeah.
them. But in the meantime, they should get paid.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't think they should be breaking the rules and spying on other teams. But if you're not gonna, the scandal is more comical to me than like, a sign of something evil. It's just stupid.
They weren't hiding crimes. They weren't doing anything that, this wasn't a big giant scandal other than the fact that it was against NCAA rules. And yeah,
right. Well, exactly. I mean, NCAA rules have been broken. Have been broken since as long as they existed. So
yes,
why does it even still exist? If we're being honest.
A lot of us that are following college sports have been asking that question for a long time.
Well, I'm still waiting for Reggie Bush to get his Heisman Trophy back. So,
sure. Why not?
I don't think, and at the time it seemed kind of like a little bit of an overreaction, and now it's just like this pure hypocrisy. So, I'm gonna ignore the Michigan scandal. I'm gonna give Reggie Bush his Heisman back, and I'm not gonna feel bad about this championship. But it's the fact that the players are being treated the way they should makes me feel a little bit, better about enjoying this championship. It made me enjoy the college football experience this year more than I have in the past. And I don't feel guilty at all about Michigan winning. And I just think it's fascinating what the economics, and I know we're far afield from the Chiefs now, but to bring it back to the NFL a little bit, how the economics of the sport, may be starting to change things. JJ McCarthy, the quarterback, a lot of people think he might be a first round pick. I think he's capable of it, but there is at least some talk maybe he'll stay in school for another year, which would sound insane, except that, in 5 years ago, that's insane. It's like, go make your money, young man. But it's like, if he stays for another year, he probably will make $5 million.
Sure. Right. Yeah. That NIL money is nice.
Yeah. And then you have a chance to be back-to-back champions. But like, the point is he can get a guarantee. Like, if he comes out, yes, he might delay his really big paycheck in the NFL by a year if he ends up being an elite quarterback. That year spent at school might eventually cost him $30 or $40 million. But if he turns out to be, just a Gardner Minshew or something, kind of a nice backup, he might not lose any money in the deal at all.
Absolutely.
And the cachet of potentially winning another championship, and the fact that he'll never have to pay for a meal in the state of Michigan again. Like, it's changed. College football to me is no longer college football. It's basically just almost like a pro football alternative.
Right.
You know, it's like the under 23s represent soccer at the Olympics. Like the different, the Olympic soccer teams are differentiated from the World Cup teams by the fact that you have to be under a certain age. That's basically what college football is now. It's just the under 23 pro football, pro football league.
That is a good comp. I can hear our listeners saying pro football. Let's go to that. So we have been fortunate to talk to you a handful of times during this ridiculous run by the Chiefs. And during every other time you've come on our show, the vibes have always been immaculate. We've been talking NFL history level legacy stuff, GOAT conversations, championships, plural, so on and so forth. We have had it great. And the last time we spoke, earlier in November, it was after the dreams of our undefeated season that we had all dreamed about in the preseason had been dashed, but the team was still 7-2, still in first place, still coming off a win over a first place team in the Miami Dolphins, who we'll talk about. And then they proceeded, after we talked, to lose to the Eagles, the Packers, the Bills, and the Raiders. And basically are entering the postseason in as big of a tailspin as we've seen this team in the Patrick Mahomes era. So, how are you feeling as far as like temperature check with the 2023 Chiefs? Do you feel that they are a massive disappointment about what do you think so far?
Well, the vibes are not immaculate.
No.
They're kind of dirty, actually. But I do wonder if the vibes may actually underrate this team at this point. I think that for so long, the vibes, the aura around this team, the aura around Patrick Mahomes made people fear them, even when, even more than their lofty abilities would suggest, that they should. I mean, the big example probably is, look back at the Super Bowl they lost, and how recklessly confident I was going into that game, even knowing that our offensive line was in tatters. But Patrick Mahomes, who had lost like one game that entire season, was there, and the offense was unstoppable, and we'll find a way to score, and then we didn't. This year a little bit different, right? They played a game having lost 6 games in a season. They took the field having already lost 6 games a season for the first time since 2014. Sorry, no, actually I take that back. The one game they had played was actually Patrick's NFL debut.
Oh, sure.
2017 when they were 9-6.
9-6.
So literally, the Blaine Gabbert game was the first time they had taken the field having lost 6 games since the original Patrick Mahomes game. But at the same time, we know what the problem is, right? Like it'd be one thing if they were just they were 10-6, 11-16 because they're good but just not great. That's not really what's going on here. This is a team with one massive problem that is bringing down what otherwise is, I think, an elite team, a team that is just as good in its totality as the teams that went to the 3 teams that have gone to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Not as good at offense, even when you take out the wide receiving situation, but the best defensive team of the Patrick Mahomes era. I mean, I just feel like certainly the national vibes. When you listening to national pundits just writing, this is just not going to be the Chiefs' year. This is, the Chiefs, don't really have any chance of winning. I feel like these people saying this are just not. They're not aware of how good the defense is. They look at this team like, well, this offense is nothing like it's been. And they're right. This offense is nothing like it's been. They scored fewer points this year than any year since 2014, even with the extra game. But they just ignored the fact that the last time they gave up this few points was 2015. And in terms of points per game, the Chiefs have not given up, I'm going down, 97. 97 Chiefs are the last team to give up. Yeah, I mean that's the best team. I think the best Chiefs team of the pre-Mahomes era.
Yep.
Agreed. And, I still I go back and forth as to whether the loss in that game was the harder loss or the 95 Chiefs with the Lynn Elliott was the harder loss. But
they're both pretty rough.
It was pretty rough, but the 95 one was because it was again one person like just tanking the season. But 97, that was the better team. And obviously it was the Broncos too. I mean, that would made it even worse. But the point being is that's the last team that gave up fewer points per game than the 2023 Chiefs. So, and actually, if you look at the point differential, the points scored, points allowed, this team resembles the teams of the mid 90s, mid to late 90s more than any other like Chiefs era. Like it's not the go offense of the Dick Vermeil era. It's not the lower scoring maybe of the early Schottenheimer era.
Right.
It's the late Schottenheimer era, and those are the teams that were good, had great regular seasons and just got, their hearts ripped out in the postseason because they didn't have Patrick Mahomes. And that's what I look at this. I'm like, think of this team as the 95 or the 97 Chiefs, but you have Patrick Mahomes.
That's like, what we always wanted, Rany.
Sure, right.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, so are you really, so yes, their record may not have been as good during the regular season, but that's because they lost a lot of close games. Once again, the Chiefs lost one game all season by more than one possession. And that was the game where they were down 14-9 in the fourth quarter, and McCole Hardman fumbled a punt at like the 5-yard line.
And Patrick had the flu. It was
and Patrick had the flu in the game, but even then, it's like that's the only game, and it's still to me one of the most incredible statistics of his career. 110 games in his career. That was the fourth time the Chiefs have ever lost a game by more than one score.
Yep.
You can name them off the top of your head. Super Bowl 55 against the Buccaneers.
Yep.
There was that 3-game stretch where
Tennessee,
Buffalo, and then at Tennessee, I think in 3 weeks where they hadn't figured out the two high shells yet.
Yep.
And,
in 2021.
In 2021, and remember, I mean, that's probably the last time the vibes were this bad. And I mean,
Absolutely, 100%
ripped off. Winning streak, went to the AFC Championship game, was leading by 18 points.
Yeah,
at halftime, or before halftime. So like the vibes being bad is not an impediment. I mean, people are like looking at like video of them screaming at each other on the sidelines or whatever.
Sure,
it's probably not great, but at the same time, when you have like MVS dropping easy catches every week that are in Kadarius Toney making mental mistakes that are costing you games. Yeah, there's going to be some emotion there. But that kind of sort of brings me to the second part of this, which is not just that the defense is really good and this team is basically a Schottenheimer team with an elite quarterback, but it's like, I think, the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, they've really started to figure out how do we work around this incredible flaw we have with our receivers. And they've talked about simplifying the offense, et cetera. Basically, figuring out who can catch the ball and can we just direct all of the targets to that.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I think people are missing out on or just not appreciating as much is just how good Rashee Rice has been in the second half.
Really good. Best rookie wide receiver in the Andy Reid's coaching.
I mean, it's not even close. I mean, it's one of the better, rookie wide receiver seasons of anybody in the last decade or so, and certainly in the second half. And it's the fact that he's starting to make like side adjustments. I know there's a lot of talk about like the long bomb that Mahomes threw, where he noticed that the safety was not well positioned for outside leverage, and there was he figured it out, and he said afterwards, somebody might have been Nate Taylor interviewed him, asked him, would you have made that adjustment, at the beginning of the season? And he didn't even finish the question. And she's like, no way. It's like, yeah, he's learned. And this is the thing about Patrick. Patrick Mahomes is so smart and so cerebral as a quarterback. He needs smart, cerebral receivers because it doesn't matter if he knows where the soft spot is going to be in the defense if the guy he's throwing it to doesn't. Right. Yeah. That is what always made his connection with Travis Kelce, the mind meld there, so valuable, is that both of them saw the same thing. Doesn't matter how if one of you is smart, if the other one is not. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Rashee Rice is showing that he has that ability is incredible. Because even when he was, catching balls, 3-4 weeks ago, I wasn't sure he had the ability to make those kind of adjustments at the line in the moment, and that Patrick Mahomes would trust him to do that too. Mm-hmm. because that's the thing. We've seen how much Patrick has lost trust of some of his receivers. He's gaining trust with Rashee Rice.
Right.
Sure.
And
As he should.
so, I mean, is he a true, WR1? Maybe not, but like at the very least, he's an incredible WR2. And
Right.
that's all that's all he needs to be. So there's that part of it. But the other thing is like, MVS is not going to, he's not going to get a lot of snaps if he doesn't make, an immediate contribution. I think early in the playoff games, like I think we're going to see Justin Watson getting more targets than him because Justin's not perfect and he has made some drops, but at least easy catches he's been able to make.
Yep.
And it's, one deep bomb is enough to move that defense back. Like we saw that in the Bengals game. So I think they just have to show that threat. And so I think Justin Watson, you're going to see more of that. You may see more Richie James just in a possession slot receiver type role, just because again, he seems to be able to like hold on to the ball. I don't think Sky Moore, we're not expecting him to come back. And if he does, I don't think he'll play much. So the guys most responsible for the hair pulling out all season are not going to be a big part of the offense in the postseason, and I think that makes a huge difference. And Tony too. I think the thing with Tony, I could still see them trying to using him in a gadget role as a running back type role.
Just don't throw him the football and don't let him
basically, or you throw him. Maybe you use them in a boundary rule, or if you drops it, at least it goes out of bounds and it doesn't like bounce up into the air and
Right. Sure.
I feel like he is the wild card because I still feel like they feel, and I can understand why they would feel like there is a role for him in this offense. But the other wild card that people are not, I think, taking enough attention towards is Mecole Hardman being back in week 18. I mean, that's the one thing to take away from the meaningless game. He was targeted 11 times. He got 6 passes for 77 yards from Blaine Gabbert.
Yep.
Right.
He looked spry.
He had the speed. He gives you the deep threat. So, the jet sweep kind of gadget role, he might fill that instead of Tony. I mean, I always, dreamed of those guys being on the field at the same time. And you could do, end arounds, reverses, double reverses. You could do all sorts of things. They may want to avoid too much cuteness because that's the other thing, of course, is I think they learned, especially in that Raiders game, where they basically lost the game on a back-to-back plays where it was like, direct snap to Isaiah Pacheco leading to a fumble, which led to then Patrick probably trying to, get it all back on one play and ended up with 14 points for the defense on the span of back-to-back plays. I mean, as much as people were frustrated with the offense after that game, if they just didn't do that, the defense was so good, they would have won the game anyway.
Yep.
And to me, that's what this Chiefs team has to do. Score 20, just go into the goal of score 20 points. Right. And don't make any turnovers.
They went 2 years scoring over 20. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, the average, if they had scored their average number of points for the last 5 seasons, which was like 27.5, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Let's call round up 28. If they scored 28 points in every single game this year, they would have been undefeated?
I believe so.
Yeah,
15-1 at the worst. Let's say, because the one game they gave up 27. So they would have been 16-1.
Sure, pretty good. That'll play.
25 points in a game.
Uh-huh.
Score 20 points, don't make a turnover. If you do that, you can beat pretty much any team, even in the playoffs. And so I think just not getting too cute. You want to, you do your red zone stuff, that's fine. But like not being too cute, being willing to punt if you have to, and just avoiding dumb turnovers. I think that's all this team has to do. The defense is just that good.
Right. Well, Rany, let me jump in here. So the last time you were on the show, as we discussed, the vibes were immaculate. We were at the halfway point, more or less, 17 game schedule, whatever. The Chiefs were 7-2, and it felt like they were like a week or two away from clinching the AFC West. And it turns out they clinched the AFC West 2 weeks ago, in December, which is not really when we expected. In fact, the last day of December, it was on New Year's Eve against the Cincinnati Bengals. Since you have not been on the show since then, and since the Cincinnati Bengals not only gave the Chiefs their 6th consecutive AFC West, or what is it, 8th? 8th consecutive, oh my Eighth consecutive AFC West championship, but also themselves were eliminated from playoff contention. I feel like every day I check Twitter/X and Jamar Chase is talking about the Chiefs again. I did want to give you the opportunity. It's funny because I feel like we've been doing this with you now 2 years. And I feel like the very first conversation we had two postseasons ago, before we went and played the Bengals, you were very ambivalent about the whole city of Cincinnati, the franchise, Joe Burrow, that whole situation. Was like, whatever, they beat us in the regular season, but I'm not concerned about them. Good for them, great. Okay, I just want to give you an opportunity to expound on how it felt winning the eighth straight AFC championship, AFC West championship, AFC West title, and to do it while also eliminating the Cincinnati Bengals from the playoffs.
Well, first off, let me quote a couple of people. To quote John Hamm from Mad Men, I don't think about you at all. That's my feeling for the Bengals. Like the Jamar Chase, we are living so rent free inside that guy's head right
It's amazing.
now.
It's amazing.
It really is. It really is phenomenal. So yeah. So as John Hamm playing Don Draper's, I don't think about you. I really, it's. I mean, yeah, it's nice to. I'm glad we knocked them out. But I still don't. I don't feel like this is a rivalry. In the sense of, I feel like they beat us one time in the playoffs. It was an incredible fluke. We did it to ourselves.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it's a rivalry, it's a one-sided. Like, they are so much more invested in this, than we are. And so on that note, to quote another great American, L'Jarius Sneed, check the stats.
Check the stats.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's I will say I'll give credit. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I'll give credit to the mayor of Cincinnati for mocking himself in their schedule release video, and ending that with the revelation that the guy filming it was Orlando Brown. I thought that was well done. That was well done by the Bengals. But and I don't want to denigrate and say the team's bad, because of course they were without Joe Burrow for
right. Of course.
I mean, if there's something we've learned this season, and something we should not take for granted, is how important it is to have a healthy quarterback, and that's another reason why, like, I feel surprisingly, I don't want to say optimistic, but kind of serene going into the playoffs. Is healthy. He's been healthy, and he's healthy. Now, of course, he was perfectly healthy going into the last playoff, and that lasted about 11 minutes.
One glorious drive
of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The first drive against the Jets
was
one of the most devastating offensive drives, where it's just like the defense did everything right. They were swarming everywhere. It didn't matter. But obviously, it required receivers like Marquez Valdes-Scantling to make tough catches, in traffic. And I'm not sure what will happen. But again, they don't have to. They don't have to play beyond their abilities. Three touchdowns or 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. I really feel like that, at least in the first 2 rounds, that really is all that they need to do. And I mean, that's the other reason why I feel pretty relaxed at the moment, is that there are 2 teams that clearly stand out from the pack in the NFL this year, right? We have the Ravens and the 49ers.
Yep.
I'm willing to concede that those are the 2 best teams on paper, and it's not particularly close. But I mean, after those 2, literally every other team in the playoffs can win on their best day, but could lose to anybody on their worst day. Like, I know we're all assuming the Bills will beat the Steelers. They probably will. The Steelers are not good enough to beat the Bills, but the Bills are perfectly capable of beating themselves.
Yes.
And to be fair, the Chiefs are too.
Yeah, they are.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. I feel like, that if the Chiefs lose this week or even next week, it will be more likely that it will be because of mistakes they made than anything the other team did. I firmly believe that. But my point is, there are 2 number 1 seeds in this tournament. the Chiefs are guaranteed to not play either of them in the first 2 rounds.
Right.
All right. I mean, they're basically this is like the 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. You're going to play the 13 seed in round 1. You'll play the 5 seed in round 2, or maybe the 12 seed, but you won't see the 1 seed until round 3.
Right.
And the Final Four here is, I guess, the championship, so you don't have to worry about 6 rounds either.
Sure,
but so the analogy breaks down at a certain level, but you get my point.
Yep.
And to me, it's like if the Chiefs just make it to the AFC Championship game, make it for a 6th year in a row. I believe the only team that's ever done that is the Patriots. Right? We've done a lot of things that have only been exceeded by the Patriots that way. 8 division titles in a row. I want to see that one of their team won 5 divisions. Went to 5 conference championship games. I want to say it might be the Raiders, as much as I hate to say that. I'm going to look that up here.
So Andy went to the 4 in a row with the Eagles.
Here, no, it was 73 to 77 Oakland Raiders.
Gotcha.
And I can't even be mad about that because their coach was John Madden. We forget about just it was before my time his coaching career, but like it's amazing to think of that guy he didn't just talk the talk. He clearly walked the walk. Too.
Yeah.
They went to 5 consecutive conference championship games from 73 to 77. If we make it to a 6th, it will be once again it'll be us and the Patriots. And right now, I'll take that, and I'll take a puncher's chance in the AFC Championship game. And if it's in Baltimore, okay, the Arrowhead Invitational will be canceled for 1 year, will be postponed.
Sure.
But we've talked about this before. It doesn't matter what the Chiefs' record is. It doesn't matter what seed they are. Is there any team in football that wakes up in the morning and sees that they're playing a football game and the quarterback on the other side is Patrick Mahomes and really is excited, really feels good about it? Like, really think the Baltimore Ravens are going to be like overly confident about playing Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game? And then I do want to bring this up. I'm not saying that the Chiefs have a chance to host the Arrowhead Invitational again, but can I just point out that it was just 4 years ago that the Baltimore Ravens, behind an MVP season from Lamar Jackson, had the number 1 seed in the AFC, and the Chiefs hosted the AFC Championship game that year as well because they lost to the freaking Titans.
Yeah,
they sure did.
In their first game, and like they will play, assuming we don't have, obviously assuming the Chiefs don't lose to the Dolphins, which we'll get into that. Assuming the Steelers beat I'm assuming here the Steelers will lose to the Bills, and it's almost like more likely we'll play play road game in Buffalo in the second round.
Correct.
I actually think that's probably more of a lock than that we play in Baltimore in the AFC Championship game because the Ravens likely will face the winner of the Browns or the Texans. And the Browns defense, I have trouble myself accepting the idea that the Cleveland Browns could, beat anybody.
With Joe Flacco. Sure.
Joe Flacco versus the Ravens.
I know, but the Joe Flacco thing is so wild. Like it almost cancels out the bad vibes of 50 years of Cleveland football and Deshaun Watson because he's just such a let's just bring in Scott Bakula from Necessary Roughness.
Sure.
He's been working on the family farm, and let's just have him throw deep bombs. Apparently, it's working. It's incredible. Yeah. So that could be the case. And then if it's the Texans, I mean, the Texans were the one team I did not want to see in the first round because CJ Stroud is just like such a wild card. Like he is so good. You could see a scenario in which he takes over a game.
Sure. Absolutely.
Certainly. He's already done it several times this year. I mean, he's been an incredible.
So could, both of those teams in one game, get off to a hot start. They have a puncher's chance against the Ravens. So it is possible.
Yeah. I mean, the Ravens lost to the Colts and the Steelers twice. And I mean, they've dropped some games that they shouldn't have. That certainly happens. When we talk about the home games for the Chiefs and just what they've accomplished in the last couple of years, do you know what the NFL record is for consecutive home playoff games that are non-Super Bowls? Like what would you think it is off the top of your head?
For the most consecutive
home playoff games played, that's obviously you ignore the Super Bowl. That's a neutral site. But just scheduled
you're saying the most
playoff
consecutive games for one team where they played every game at home.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I think it has to be the Chiefs now. What years
So
old?
the 81 to 90 Dolphins played 10 in a row. The
Okay.
07 to 13 Patriots only got to 9 in a row. They traveled to Denver right in the middle of 2 like 9 and 8 stretches or whatever. But they only strung 9 together in a row. The Chiefs are about to host their record 14th consecutive home playoff game, and the previous record was 10. So these guys just, they find a way somehow for this game to travel to Arrowhead every time. And yeah, you're right. Like if they had to string, like if they had to keep this streak going for all 3 AFC home games, the Steelers would have to win both games. They would have to beat the Bills and then beat the Ravens in the next round for the Chiefs to host Dolphins. Never going to happen. But what a hell of a run. I mean, even if they go 14 this Saturday and then they have to break that streak by going on the road to Buffalo, just an unbelievable run. I've had so many nuggets like that throughout these years. That's just like, oh my God, like they're not only the record holders, they're the record holders by 4 games, 10 to 14. It's just wow.
That's counting this week. This will be the 14th.
This will be the 14th one, which is already obviously guaranteed.
It'll probably end. Might not, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and it is funny how people, keep talking about, well, Patrick Mahomes has never won a road game. Well, I guess, maybe he'll finally get that opportunity. But yeah, let's talk about this game, just because the weather is starting to become a wild card here, to a point even I'm not comfortable with, because when the game when the matchup was determined on Sunday night, I was rooting for the Dolphins to pull that out, because frankly, I thought the Bills were the better team, and I was hoping that the Dolphins would win so that they could host Buffalo and Buffalo would beat them.
Yeah.
And we could bring the Steelers to town. Sure.
Exactly. We'd get the Steelers, and then we have the chance of hosting in the second round, because
the path would have been great.
The path would have been
ideal.
Yeah. But when the game ended, it's like, okay, the way the Dolphins played, I'm not really too worried about them. And then it's like, oh, I saw the weather forecast. It's like, ooh, okay, it's going to be, very, very cold. I looked it up. I went through, the records. I'm assuming, he never played a cold game in Hawaii growing up. I don't know about Alabama, but the SEC in September, October, November.
Yeah.
When you think about it, cold weather is not a college football phenomenon usually. Maybe the Thanksgiving, but the season's over at Thanksgiving, and then bowl games are in warm weather places, right? So certainly, if you're trying to, if you're in the playoffs, you're not playing really, really cold weather games,
or you're playing in domes or whatever. Yeah, right.
And the coldest game he has ever won in the NFL was 48 degrees. It was Black Friday this year against the Jets in New York. 48 degrees. Exactly.
Yeah,
it was against the New York Jets. So what do I need to say more? But the point being is, he has not shown any ability to play in cold. He has very little experience playing in cold. I'm thinking, okay, this will be great. But as the weather forecast seems to be getting worse with time, it's like at some point it's like it's too cold for Patrick Mahomes to play. I don't. And is it? I mean, for a team that has the glaring flaw of we can't catch the ball, is having the temperature so cold that you can't feel your fingers likely to fix that problem. It doesn't seem like that's a good combination.
Well, unless it influences the Chiefs to not throw the ball.
I assume that's what's going to happen. This is going to be a game where you run, and then and yes, Pacheco's in good position, but. And I guess, I mean, if it makes it to the point where Tyreek Hill can't catch the ball, then I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the Dolphins have a very underrated running game. Right. That actually is,
they do.
I think by
highest yards per carry in the NFL,
and stuff like that. They do very well. I mean,
Mostert and A-Chain are both home run hitters. I mean, and Jeff Wilson Jr., they've got all kinds of guys.
Have you guys seen the numbers for Devon? Is it A-Chan? Right, Devon A-Chan.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he's I think the fastest ball
carries.
800
yards.
Yeah, 8 yards a carry.
Yeah, 7.8 yards. I've got my stat head. We'll keep talking, but that feels kind of historic.
Jamal Charles is rushing at that. I mean, that's crazy.
So that is a problem. Now, I think we have a defense that can that is well above average, and their splits between playing losing teams and winning teams is well documented. But I mean,
Oh, Miami splits. I see what you mean. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is. Yeah. It is, Randy. I don't know that we've discussed this on the pod before, but Taylor and I have gone back and forth on this, and I actually think we're probably of a like mind. But it's tough because when your team's not playing in it, I feel like it's really easy to, as a football fan, and this is unique from other sports. You don't get it in basketball, obviously. You don't get it in baseball. Like football is played in horrific weather, like weather where human beings should not even be outside, let alone hitting each other like with the force of a car crash, and battering into each other for 3 hours, and it's an absurd situation, but it's tough as a fan of the Chiefs to I've always been pro dome for this reason, pro rolling roof. Like let's just bring that back, right? Like let's just for the vibes of having a giant roof that transfers between two stadiums. I want to see it. I want to live in a world where that exists. Like bring back, the great American infrastructure. But anyway, the point here is you're right that like at a certain point it just becomes returning to a conversation we had off the record about Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like it's like a random event. You're just rolling the dice, right? Like it almost doesn't matter what the stats of these two teams are, and because at a certain point you're just putting it in such a hostile and random environment that like anything can happen, and it's impossible to have any confidence about what's going to happen in the game because it's just unspeakably cold, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's basically it's a great leveling factor at a certain point. And if you're the better team, you don't want
right.
You want to eliminate randomness as much as possible. And
right.
And I do think the Chiefs are the better team. I think most people would say, even people who are down on the Chiefs would say this game, the Dolphins the way the Dolphins are playing right now is they are underdogs. I mean,
they're limping into this game. They're hurt. They've got, they obviously lost their opportunity to even win the AFC East. I mean,
signing Justin Houston,
yes,
to the active roster. Like, are we actually going to see Justin Houston? I mean,
it's a revenge game.
It is.
Emmanuel Ogbah,
imagine if he wins. If the Dolphins win, man, Justin Houston, that's gonna be painful. But at the same time, there's a reason why he was available to be signed.
Yeah,
because Jared Allen and Dee Ford were busy. That's why they signed him.
That's right.
They lost their two best pass rushers this year. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips both went down with bad injuries themselves.
They lost their third best pass rusher last week. Van
Ginkel's out.
He's going to be out.
That's right.
I mean, there's three best pass rushers that are out. So
on the
given
they're living.
Yeah, that the tackles have been a bit of an issue, the second half of the season. Wanya Morris is probably out of it. Sounds like Donovan Smith will be back. So, the worries of, they had Joe Tooney over at left tackle there at the end.
Sure. The week one starting five should be out there.
Yes. Not having to start Prince. I don't even know how you say it.
Prince Tegumanogo. Yeah.
Tegumanogo, to actually start a playoff game. That feels good, but also against a team with the pass rushers this limited. The pocket should be good for Patrick, assuming he can throw the ball and somebody can catch it. Here are the numbers, guys. I haven't seen this reported anywhere, and I may have to report this myself.
Exclusive.
I limited this to running backs because quarterbacks, the Michael Vicks and
Lamar Jacksons. Sure.
Abnormal
I'm limiting this to 100 rushing attempts because the quarterbacks will get to 100 rushing attempts sometimes. 100 rushing attempts in NFL history. Who has the highest rushing yards per attempt?
It's either Devon Achane or it's going to be like
Barry
Payton or someone, or Barry. Yeah, right. But it's probably Devon Achane, I would guess.
Or Jamal Charles.
It is Devon Achane.
Okay,
at 7.8.
Sure.
Do you know? So he's at 7.8. Do you know what second place is?
Oh my gosh!
It's got to be. I mean, Jamal had
he averaged 5.7.
Yeah, and he had a season where he was over 6. I think surely he had a year or two where he was up there. I would imagine it's got to be one of those seasons where it was injury shortened because obviously if
barely
you're
over
300 carries, you're not putting up 6 yards a carry. That would be absurd. Somebody would have had 3,000 yards or whatever.
But I bet Achane is pretty healthy.
He's probably pretty well clear of second place. I would guess.
Well, first, I'm a slight digression. You guys are pretty sure about you don't recall the Jamal Charles scandal with Scott Pioli? Well before Pioli, deserved to be fired because of freaking
candy wrapper stuff.
Yeah. I wanted his ass gone. Jamal Charles, because I'm saying 100 attempts here, but I think the official NFL minimum to qualify is like 150 or 200.
Right.
If you set the number to 150, the all-time single season yards per attempt record is held by the great Jim Brown.
Right. I do remember this now. Yes.
At 6.402. In 2010, Jamal Charles broke that record. Had a higher rushing yards per attempt in the final game of the season, a meaningless game, and was left out there despite having more yards per attempt than Jim Brown, and of course, saw his average for the season go down because he was stuffed after a 2 or 3 yard attempt or whatever.
Sure.
Ended at 6.378 and lost the record. And the Chiefs didn't even seem to acknowledge that record was there for the taking. Like,
no, right. I'm sure they had.
He was so obsessed with the candy wrappers that he didn't seem to understand.
Sure, of course.
His star running back could break a all-time NFL record held by Jim freaking Brown.
Right.
So I'm so bitter about that.
6.4. Geez.
That's 6.4. But if you lower it to 100, number 2 is a guy named Joe Perry, who was on the 1949.
I think he was also the guitarist for Journey.
I believe so. Before that, he was at 6.8. We're talking Devon Achane is a yard.
That's wild.
Above anybody with
crazy.
That is kind of insane, kind of scary. I don't know what to make of that, but that is.
He's really good, and he's really fast. And
but that in a game where you can't throw, that could be a problem.
Yep, exactly right. I mean, they have dudes. They've got Waddle coming back. They sat Raheem Mostert for the last 2 weeks because the old guy's kind of losing some steam, but he's going to be well rested for this game. I mean, it's going to be. I think people that are discounting, the Dolphins have lost the last 8 games they played that had a kickoff under 40 degrees, just as a team. Even I know Tua hasn't won any cold ones, but really the Dolphins in general struggle with this. And that's because, obviously, of all the time they spend in warm weather. But I do think that their offense is capable coming into this game and playing ball control football just like the Chiefs can. The only difference is the Chiefs have a, excellent defense on the other end, where I think the Dolphins defense is struggling. But offensive wise, I mean, the Dolphins are as good as it gets in the offense right now when everything's clicking, when they're, they've got Tyreek and Waddle catching and all that stuff. So I don't know. I think people are kind of underselling the Dolphins offense here, but at the same time, the matchup, it's strength on strength when the Dolphins have, and it's certainly
go ahead. I was going to say, do you know what the weather is in Miami right now? As we're
what is
this podcast,
70,
just guess the temperature.
79 something. I mean, low.
Yeah, it's 67 degrees.
Okay,
the low in Miami through whenever they fly out, I assume Friday or Saturday, is going to be 68 degrees.
A frigid 60.
Apparently they can turn the air conditioning on in their practice facility all the way down to 50, which is
really okay. Wow.
That's what they've been practicing. So
sure. Well, 50 degrees.
Yeah, at least the Chiefs are practicing right now in upper 20s weather.
Yep, it's 34 right now. It's going to be 26 tomorrow, 24 on Friday. Probably won't do a full practice then, but yeah, -2, is the low on Saturday. I just wonder how do you even prepare your body for that though, right? Like
as the Dolphins or as anyone?
Yeah,
the other problem though is that how's this going to affect the crowd? Right.
Sure.
Because,
that's true.
Home field advantage is so dependent on crowd noise. And I assume the stadium will be filled, but I mean, you've seen tickets online go for as low as $50.
Wow.
Right, this is the cheapest playoff game you'll ever see because of the weather. And are people going to be able to yell and be as excited? These are factors to consider. So I do think this game is a little bit of a there is a crapshoot element to it.
I'm optimistic because of those prices, because the type of fan that's crazy enough to go to this game and yell and be,
This is true.
those fans need $50 tickets. Those fans
Sure,
aren't.
that's actually a good point.
Yeah,
You're
they're not the suits that want to be out there just
right,
to say that they're out of playoff game, right? These are the true fans.
Say what you want about Chiefsaholic and X Factor. They're going to scream louder.
They would yell. They would yell from their cells this week.
I don't know either of those guys are going to be available to attend the game, but
they will not. They will not be available.
One is banned and one is in jail. So yeah, that's seems like
I actually think X Factor got unbanned, but I did not see whether he was arrested this week. If you did not see this,
well, yes, I did. But what on earth would possess them to unban him?
I'm not sure if that was credible information or just an idle boast from him, and I have not checked to see whether
it came from him directly.
It did come from him.
There's no other type of boast from him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I have not checked to see whether he posted bail from his most recent arrest. I would assume, I would hope that he would not be there. But you are correct that if he's there, I'm sure he and everyone else there will be as loud as they possibly can be. And let's be honest, unless you're a Dolphins fan that grew up, that you inherited it from your parents or something like that. Or you went to college in Miami, but you're from North Dakota.
Right. Yeah, I don't feel like this is the game where the Dolphins are like, "Hey, you want to fly to Kansas City?" And
I'm not going to travel for this one.
No,
that's that is true. This is if this was the Bills game, if this Bills went down, oh my gosh, that would be
this would be a 75% Bills crowd.
It very well might be.
It would be.
All credit, like you talk about the Bengals. I don't think I joke. I don't think about them all, but yeah, I enjoy the fact that we despise them so much, in a way that I don't feel that way towards the Bills. Like
I don't really,
if we play them around 2 and we lose, it'll suck. I'll be upset, but like I'll wish them well. Whereas the Bengals, I want them to get stomped, curb stomped the next week.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. The Bills are extremely likable. Like regardless of them being,
and they've suffered. I mean, I guess Bengals fans have suffered as well, but there's the Bills suffering is sort of unique. I think
the Bills suffering's unique. I also think that their players are a lot more humble.
They have borne it with grace.
Yes,
whereas the Bengals and their franchise,
and they live in Buffalo. Let's not discount that. Like,
I mean,
I don't even.
And
they
dealt with Tom Brady for 2 decades. There's a lot.
Bengals fans live in Cincinnati. We've got, I mean,
well, there's also, and honestly, the personalities of Josh Allen and Joe Burrow kind of factor into this too. I mean, Josh Allen,
of course.
I think I like him on a personal level. Like if we couldn't have and Burrow, I mean, nothing. I don't dislike him, but it's a little bit the ratio of cockiness to actual accomplishments a little high for my taste. Not terrible. He's been to the Super Bowl. I'll give him credit. It wasn't him that came up with Burrowhead, but he didn't disavow himself of that either. So anyway, so we'll get to Buffalo. Hopefully we'll be back next week talking about that game. But I'm just we got to get through this weather here, and
we do. You've been extremely gracious with your time. We very much appreciate it. Want to get you out with just to talk about, we always do a little bit of legacy talk, usually sometimes more than others when you're on, because that's one of your specialties. The ceiling and floor on this team is insane. I mean, if they go out and they lay an egg on Saturday, they lose this game, no one's going to be shocked, right? That's not, it's certainly not going to be something where people say, I never saw that coming.
Right.
Then again, if they make a run, if they go on and even appear in the AFC Championship game, God forbid, win the AFC again, I mean, it's going to be a pleasant surprise, but clearly it's within the capabilities of this team, of the quarterback, of the coach, they've got the defense to do it. So just thinking about the hill to climb, where if they do it, they would have to beat this very game Dolphins team this week, and then probably at Bills, at Ravens, I would guess. Or, we've talked about that. Maybe there's an upset in there, but and then you're probably looking at the best team in the NFL in the 49ers on the other end of that. And if they can make a run through there, I mean, I get chills just thinking about the implications of this Chiefs team being as down as they've ever possibly been. And yet we could say that if they make a run and play and go win 4 games, which is entirely possible for them to do, now we're right back in on all the dynasty talks, all the greatest of all times, everything that's still already on the table. I don't know. Just what are your, I mean, they have everything still in front of them, right? Like it's all available for them to go take.
It absolutely is, and you kind of summarized the point I was trying to make, which is that, like, I'm not denying the floor of this team. I absolutely
Yeah.
agree that they could absolutely lose this week to the Dolphins. It and it, if they do, it'll probably be their fault, and there will be a lot of recriminations within the organization about, is Andy Reid losing his touch as a coach because they didn't sweat the small things. I don't think Andy Reid's job is going to be in jeopardy, but, like, up to and including Matt Nagy,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah,
Sure.
certainly.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know how much we're going to be seeing Connor Embry,
Yeah,
around if
right.
that
Hopefully no.
happens, right? And I know nothing about the guy, but, like, just I'm saying, like, if they lose this game, and early exits from the playoffs, there will be scapegoats.
Heads will
There
roll.
should be, um, and so that absolutely exists. Well, one of the things we mentioned is, we'll be talking about Travis Kelce's legacy. Like, the thing I'm still unsure about is, what is Travis Kelce's? I don't even know if he knows, but what is his future? What does he want to do?
Sure.
I made the joke when he hosted Saturday Night Live on Twitter, mostly joking that, it's like, he was so good at this, I'm worried he's gonna, like, pull
Sure.
a Jim Brown and retire early just to go,
Yeah.
go pursue his movie career. I did, and that was before he started dating the most famous woman.
Yeah, right.
And, is in the process of doing so, elevated himself, leapfrog his teammate to become the most famous NFL player on the planet. I mean, there's no way around that.
Yep.
So, on that note, I do think it's worth pointing out that it sounds like it was his decision to pass up the opportunity,
right,
to get an easy 16 yards and continue his streak of 1,000 yards, which, I thought was the right decision. I advocated for it as soon as the last game was over. He needs the week off.
right.
He's 34 years old, and to paraphrase Toby Keith, he's not as good as he once was, but he's as good once as he ever was. And I think that they have to use him. Like, he's not going to be presumably the guy who goes out there and has 15 catches for 170 yards or whatever, but, like, he's going to be, if they do win, it's going to be because he makes some absolutely crucial catches in tough situations, and takes some hits. And I think he knows that. It does make me a little bit more concerned. Could he retire after the season? In the thinking there is, if he is, then the importance of maintaining the streak of 1,000-yard seasons would mean less, because it was going to end after this year anyway. It's not like next year. And also that, like, if this is it, he wants to go out a winner. Like, I actually think that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, there's a very good chance he will retire. And, right now, if you give me the button and I could push the button, we win and he retires, absolutely. We win 3 with Travis Kelce.
I agree.
Godspeed to you, Travis.
Back to back.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's
hell, I might take Andy retiring too.
Sure.
I mean, winning these 3 would be just a dream come true.
Well, and my goal has always sort of been in the Patrick Mahomes era, is kind of to get to 6, is to win, 3 in the first half of his career, the Reid Kelce era.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's kind of what Brady did, was basically he won 3 very early in his career, had the gap. They retooled the team around, and then won 3 as a veteran quarterback in his mid-30s. He was still excellent. Like, Patrick would be on that path, even if they need a year or 2 to kind of recover from it. You win 3, you can take a couple of years to, I mean,
you can take
Brady 10 years,
10 years, right?
Yeah, not to say we need to. I mean, but, like, even if he does, like, you've got 3 in the tank, like, you're already on the Mount Rushmore. So, I'd like to think if they don't win, I think that he would consider it unfinished business and come back maybe one more year. But it's just something that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
So if they, they're absolutely capable of losing this game, and we're going to have an uncomfortable. We'll talk win or lose, I hope, next week. But
sure.
The discussion will be a lot more along those lines. What does this mean for people in the organization, for Kelce's future, Andy Reid, etc. And so I don't deny that can happen. I think that people in the sport are just kind of ignoring the ceiling, right? They're just not seeing the ceiling, and
they're sick of the ceiling too.
And that may be
they
part
don't
of it.
want to see it.
No,
I think that maybe there's part of it, and we've talked. I've said this before on the show that probably after we won, or maybe even in the offseason, kind of just talking about the arc of Patrick Mahomes' career and how not that I would ever want the Chiefs to have a 9-8 limp into the playoffs kind of record, be a 7 seed, but like at some point in his career, it would be wonderful to see him, the Chiefs go in as a 7 seed, even with a prime of career Patrick Mahomes, not a 43-year-old, and just how even in their diminished state, his mere presence on the field just scares the living crap out of any opponent that the Chiefs face. It's not exactly what we're getting this year, but this is kind of close. Like this is, and it's all the other reason I want to see it is because, like you said, it's all upside. Like if you lose, okay, nobody expected anything from you. Like there will be recriminations, yes, but like you said, it won't be an upset if the Chiefs lose. It won't be, I don't think it'll be a stain on Patrick Mahomes' legacy, right? Because I think people understand that the problems with this team have very little to do with him, except maybe that he's just, he's starting to lose his mind having to throw to these guys, and and he needs to do a better job there too. I mean that pass that was returned for a pick six by the Raiders, that was at least partly on him. Yes, it could have been a better route, but like he has to avoid. That's the sort of stupid stuff we have to avoid, him included. But so there's not much downside here. But man, how awesome would it be for them, to start winning with this 11-6 team, number 3 seed on the road? It will. I mean, the Taylor Swift part of this is funny because, of course, just when fans of the other 31 NFL teams thought they were, couldn't be more sick of Chiefs talk. She entered our lives as this lovely gift, this lovely middle finger to the rest of the NFL. It's like, oh, you were sick of us. Now we're on Entertainment Tonight every day, guys. Now we're now Andy Cohen is talking about us on Bravo or whatever.
Beyond sports.
Good luck avoiding the Chiefs when Good Morning America is talking about their tight ends romance. Like that's the level we're at. So yes, everybody's sick of us. And how delicious would it be if this diminished team, a flawed team, but a team that dominates the headlines even in this flawed and diminished state, starts a Super Bowl run? It would drive the rest of the country insane. It would cause the entire city of Denver to be committed to sorry, you're gonna have to move out at that point.
I would love to see it. I'm gonna be the king of the asylum. It's gonna be incredible.
You're gonna be the one.
I will say the vibes. My assessment of the vibes from my annual ski trip was in Vail last week. Still excellent. Probably more Chiefs jerseys than Broncos jerseys on the slopes in the middle of Colorado.
Sure, of course.
I
mean, Rany, they finished with no quarterback, no cap space, no top 10 draft pick, and no playoffs, which is really an ideal situation. They did beat the Chiefs. Congratulations. You got your first win over Kansas City.
Exactly. They won their Super Bowl.
Exactly. But you got nothing else out of it. So
the Raiders fired their head coach. The Chargers fired their head coach. The Broncos had fired their head coach a year ago. They're keeping their head coach. They fired their quarterback, who, by the way, they owe $9 figures.
$1
I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, I'm almost worried that they're just going to take it all on the chin and just have all of that cap money applied to next year, and try and go 1 and 16.
Probably should.
I mean,
they probably should have done that this year, so they could have gotten. I mean, quarterback class next year might be good too, but.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's tough. It's tougher to do that in the NFL than you'd think, I think. But Sean Payton has the cachet to he knows he'll keep his job, et cetera. I'm curious to see. I don't think they'll do that. I think he's too good a coach, frankly. I mean, to lose that many games. It's funny because I mean the Rams. People were talking about the Rams doing that this year, and Sean McVay got them to the playoffs. When we get to the point of talking about Andy Reid's retirement, who to replace him with, man. If we could have our pick, there are some guys out there. Sean McVay would definitely be very, very, very high at the top of my list. But anyway, it was the vibes are immaculate with respect to the Broncos. But man, if there's a level above immaculate, like a Chiefs playoff run now
Mm,
this year with this team,
delicious.
it's all upside. And it's funny because look, I love what Alex Smith did for this organization. We all do. But look, deep down, I think in the heart of every Chiefs fan, there's that voice that asks, "Man, what would it have been like in 2017
Yeah.
if Alex Smith, I don't know, had fractured a pinky or
Yeah.
something and was not able to start in against the Titans."
Boy,
Patrick
talk
Mahomes
about a cold game.
with one
That
game
game
of
was
experience.
freezing.
Yeah, that was one of the coldest games they've played, right? But
yes, Austin and I were there, and it was terrible. And I mean, the first half was fun, but it was very cold, and we were clamoring for Patrick Mahomes at halftime because the offense clearly was struggling. Yeah. And you're right. If they had brought him in,
right? If they had, but imagine if he had just played that whole playoff run, out for the playoffs, but Patrick Mahomes with one game of experience. I just try to imagine what it'd be like for this promising quarterback, but completely unheralded, suddenly dropped in the playoffs and recreated what he did in the the first 4 weeks of the following season.
Absolutely.
But I bring it up because going into this meaningless game we just played, the week 18 game, the Chiefs were 10-6 and had a plus 76 point differential.
Mm.
The 2017 Chiefs were 10-6 and had a plus 76 point differential.
Oh, that's tasty.
And that's what this team is, kind of the 2017 Chiefs in terms of overall quality, the good defense, struggling offense, not struggling, but not elite offense, good defense. But Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, not Alex Smith, who I love, but it's Patrick Mahomes. And there are 3 paths to the Chiefs winning any individual game, or if you want to say the whole the whole playoff run. If they're going to do it, there's 3 ways to do it. There is we'll rank them from the worst narrative to the best. The worst is just kind of the receivers are just good enough. They stamp out the drops.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey, they rely on Kelsey and Rashee Rice, and but Justin Watson has one big catch, like a 60-yard bomb,
token catch,
or McCole Hardman. Their receivers don't suck, and they win dogfights, right? They got a good defense, they win dogfights. That could happen, and that it won't be the prettiest football, but it absolutely could work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second is that the defense is just so elite, that they win 14-10. Maybe Saturday they win 7-0. I don't know what anything's going to be possible in this weather. But the point is the one thing about the defense, they're great, but they have not been very opportunistic in terms of turnovers.
Not at all. Yeah,
I mean,
except against Miami.
Well, exactly. I mean, except Mike Edwards and picking up fumbles and returning for touchdowns.
Brian Cook's not in this week, but yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. But I mean, the team as a whole, how many interceptions they had the whole year?
I think 4 or something. It was very low.
It was 8. It wasn't 4, but 8. Gotcha. But 8 in 17 games, 8 interceptions. Yeah. And it's still an elite defense because you know what? A sack on third down is a form of turnover, right? It does work. But they do have, despite only having the 8 interceptions, they had the 2 fumble recoveries for a touchdown, and at least did they have any? No, I guess they didn't have any pick sixes.
They didn't. They had 2 defensive touchdowns.
There was 2 defensive touchdowns, and
they were second in the league in sacks. They definitely got to the quarterback.
Right.
They had 15
and that the question is, could the defense, in addition to clamping down, the defense just puts on an elite performance where they actually score. They have a pick 6 or another strip back fumble for a touchdown, and they are responsible for the points, and they win. And they win a game 17-3 or something like that.
Sure,
like that, and then finally the defense gets the attention that it deserves. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the second path, and then the third path is Patrick Mahomes goes off in a way, not even statistically, but puts on a highlight reel with his limited receivers.
Sure.
He
does.
Legs. It could be with his legs. It could be just some absurd throw, under pressure that somehow doesn't get dropped. And elevates his legacy in a way he literally could not have done in any previous season because the team was not flawed enough
Right.
for him to shine it. But the only comp would be the Super Bowl they lost to the Buccaneers, where one of the most valiant efforts anybody's ever seen in defeat. To the point where I think that even though he lost, and I was worried that his performance in that game would be overshadowed just because of the result. I think people look back at that, and I think Chiefs fans have done their job to keep the light burning on that performance. That people recognize how good he was in that game. But that if he could actually do that and win with a flawed team, that he might ascend to an even higher plane of fame and just sort of legacy. So there are pathways. There are multiple pathways for the Chiefs to certainly win their first two games, and whether they get lucky and host the AFC Championship game, or they go to Baltimore and they put the fear of God into Lamar Jackson. Because what's Lamar Jackson's biggest weakness as a quarterback?
1-3 in the playoffs.
Well, that too, but like as his performance
mechanically or whatever,
he gets sacked a ton.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
his sack rate has been better the second half of the season, but like every running quarterback, that is sort of what they do because they have to move around, they have to scramble. And that, if they don't have eyes in the back of their head as much as we sometimes think they do. His sack rate this year, 7.5%. Last year, 7.4. The year before, 9. Patrick Mahomes' highest sack percentage of his career is 4.3.
Right.
Like he basically gets sacked twice as often as Patrick Mahomes.
Sure.
And going up against, a team that I think had 56 sacks, something like that. 57 sacks, second in the NFL. Joe Cullen is, a genius. And the defense is, Brian Cook aside, is pretty much healthy.
Sure.
I really, I don't. Certainly the D line is in really good shape. I think the linebackers are pretty close to being, Drew Tranquil being back is huge.
Right. Snead seems like he's mostly over the calf stuff. I mean, they kept him limited, but
getting him the game off was huge.
Yeah, it was.
And Snead and Trent McDuffie just being such a great combo together. And I mean, even those guys have sacks, right? I mean, that's the other thing is you just have Spags.
Yeah. Justin Reed came up with 2 huge sacks against the Bengals. I mean,
and that's the thing: is Lamar Jackson capable of recognizing all the different? It's going to be a chess game, and I feel confident just because we've seen multiple times this year the Chiefs give up points in the first half, and then they adjust the game plan on defense. Spags does make some changes at halftime or whatever, and they just clamp everything down. I mean, they did it, the Chargers game where I think it was 17-17 at or at halftime, or 20-17. It was 24-17, but they gave up 0 points in the second half after giving up 17 in the first half. Then they did the exact same thing to the Bengals. 17 points in the first half, they were losing, and 0 points in the second half.
They did that in Vegas. Vegas started off with 2 quick touchdowns against them, and then they completely shut them out for the rest of that game. They've pitched great second halves so far this season.
And I think you need quarterbacks who are, there are very few quarterbacks who are capable of reading all of those disguises and figuring that stuff out. And I'm not and Lamar, the thing, I'm not saying Lamar can't, but I'm not sure how much experience he's had facing the kind of defense that Spags might throw at him, both in terms of the quality of the players, the quality of the defense itself, but also the variety of schemes, and the hiding of which of the 7 guys on the line who are all look to be sprinters in a 100-meter race are actually going to rush the quarterback, and which ones are going to drop back into coverage where you don't expect them. Sort of thing.
Yeah, those sugar blitzes. I mean, that is kind of a strength on weakness. But when the Chiefs defense is going up against Lamar, that's certainly not something. I
haven't watched enough of Lamar this year to be able to say is that where he's made a lot of improvement, because he's had a phenomenal year. I think he is deserving if he wins the MVP award. And I mean, let's not discount. They destroyed the 49ers, which is
they destroyed every good team they played this year. They destroyed the Lions, who were very good. Obviously, we know that. They destroyed the Seahawks, who were almost in the playoff. I mean, they did a great job, and they've had a hell of a season. They've had hell of a seasons before that came up short in the playoffs, and we'll see if they've made any changes. We'll see what kind of path the Chiefs take through the playoffs, whether it's one of your 3 or knowing this team, they'll probably choose mystery door number 4. That's none of the paths that you laid out, but it's still somehow their path because
it's going to be the Marquez Valdez
there
scandal.
you go, the revenge tour,
night.
where he's just going to go nuts for 150 yards. In every
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, look,
revenge against who? Revenge against the Chiefs fans.
Everyone.
Probably.
Revenge against the universe.
Sure.
And they asked him when he's struggling, and he said,
revenge against that reporter. That asked him why he was what he was struggling with this year. Listen, we know he's capable. We saw him in the AFC Championship game.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's possible.
Look, I wouldn't trade that game for all of the struggles he's had this year.
I agree. I agree for sure. He literally, is as responsible for winning that Super Bowl as most of the players have their own role in. I mean, he was amazing in that game. So we'll see how they pull it off. We'll talk to you next week. Either way, if they win or lose, we'll either put the 2023 Chiefs to rest, or we will look forward to the Bills game. Either way, thanks for coming on, and we'll catch you then.
I look forward to it.